Good morning, Eden. So, we've discussed with the last two classes, you get to listen to them, the nature of Ur.
Put on the spot there.
Sorry. The nature of it's recorded now for posterity.
Shut.
Kidding. So, we discussed the nature of Ur, of light, and why the metaphor as light is being used. Yeah? And we explained, using the Alter Rebbe's words, Morning Mayor, that the Rebbe cites to in his index, under the entry for Ur. In chapter 51, the Alter writes that the reason why it's called Ur, the reason why we're using the term Ur, light, is because it's Gilui Ahelam, it's a revelation from that which is concealed. So, we explained at length some of the reasons why that is, and what's expressed in this idea. And that light is an expansive expression that emerges from within the state of concealment in the source to be revealed outside the source. The light itself is nothing other than a reflection of the source. It has no other independent identity. The light isn't the source, it's only a small ray. And while it's a small ray, it faithfully expresses the source. That's all it does.
The source, not in its entirety, right? Just a.
It's only a ray. It's only a sliver. It's only a reflection. It's only a ha'ara, to use the language of Chassidus. Ha'ara, a ray,
Right.
as opposed to the whole. It's not even a chunk of the sun that comes out. It's just an expression from within the sun that's revealed outside the sun, or the source.
Synonym is also a hint? Or is this just a different meaning?
Hint.
Yeah, like ha'ara is a hint.
That's the ayin. It's not a hint. That's a note.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, ha'ara with the aleph,
Okay, sorry.
meaning from this term or. But a ha'ara, as in like a sliver.
With an aleph?
Or is an aleph. Well, there's or with ayin, that would be leather.
Yeah. Right.
Or with an aleph is light. Sometimes actually it talks about the relationship between those two words and why they would sound the same. Anyway, or with an aleph, and or with an aleph. Okay, so that's what we spoke about in terms of light. The next element then is to understand the way in which the oil and the keli interacts. Now, before we get into it, at this juncture, it should be understood like this. Everything we said till now would leave you thinking correctly that the oil itself, that the light itself, has no particular character or personality. It just reflects the source. And in the case of Hashem himself, the source itself is Helam, is the absolute concealment. It's unknowable. It's beyond. So the light that would come out of it would be, for lack of a better word, translucent. Wouldn't have any particular character. It's just a reflection of the source. And the source is not defined. And therefore the the light that will emerge will be non-defined.
So
If we talk about sorry.
Reflection is a difficult word, though, right? Because when I think of reflection,
You're thinking of a mirror bouncing off.
No, not only that. It's an exact replica of the source. Reflection.
So maybe reflection is not the word that
doesn't
do
its own
justice.
characteristics.
Okay. So ray. Stick with the ray. I limit the reflection in that it doesn't have any character of itself. It's there just to express the source. Right? That's what I meant by reflection. Not because it comes from independence, but it's a good point. I actually once asked Simon Jacobson why he uses the word reflection rather than ray.
He uses that word.
He uses that word, and I asked him why do you use reflection rather than ray. He says, I didn't think about it too much, but it seemed just, I say that because all it does is just reflects the source and just expresses the source. I refer to it as reflection. I said, okay. But I hear what you're saying, and then I asked him because of that question.
Reflection means it's the whole source.
Reflection like you're reflecting in the mirror.
You see the whole source.
Yeah. So we'll stick with ray, which is the word I would use anyway. But he used that word, so I asked him and he explained to me. Anyway. So everything we said till now would leave you with the impression correctly that the light itself, the energy itself that emerges from Hashem, that expressed from Hashem, that's expansive from Hashem, the Oid Ein-Sof, the light with no end, or any light actually for that matter, doesn't have any particular character. Especially, again, considering the fact that the source is beyond all definition. So if the light's going to be your faithful expressor of the source, it's not going to have a definition. Right? So where do the definitions come from? Wisdom, intelligence, kindness. God's wisdom, God's intelligence, God's kindness. Where do those definitions come from?
the source, I imagine, right?
Right, not from the Or. Everything comes from the source, but not from the Or, not from the light. Where would you say it came from? Where would you say they start to take shape?
At the source.
Not where they came from. Where do they take shape? What makes them take shape? Everything comes from the source. We got that. By the kelim, by the recipient. Because if the entire nature of the light is that it reflects, that it expresses the source and remains a faithful expression of the source is beyond definition, and the light that emerges will be beyond definition. Whereas the vessel would start to have definition. So what's the vessel's relationship with the source?
What is the vessel?
What's the vessel's relationship with the source? If the light's relationship with the source is just to reveal and express its state of existence, right? The light expresses the state of existence of the source. So what would be the relationship of the vessel to the
The
source?
vessel is, the source is dependent on the vessel's
Which model of relationship
definition.
would? Sorry?
Well, like you said, or how I'm understanding, the vessel is what gives definition to
Right, but you're
expression, no?
let's understand something. So the light gives like you're saying, the vessel gives definition. Good. When the light comes and interacts with the vessel, it gets a definition. We'll elaborate on that in a second, but let's pause for a moment, because you all correctly pointed out that the vessel comes from the source also. So the light comes from the source, and the vessel comes from the source. But they're different. The light is a light, and the vessel is a vessel. So if the light's relationship with the source is, and that's how we're calling it light, as we explained in the last two classes, because it just expresses what and who the source is, unfiltered, undefined, faithfully reflecting, faithfully expressing the source from which it emerged. That's why we're calling it light. Projecting, it's faithfully projecting the source itself. So what's the vessel's relationship with the source?
To become, to receive it.
No, it's coming into being. What's this relationship? Receiving is its relationship with the light. What's its relationship with the source? It's the same Abishur that created the vessels that created the light. It's got to be a different relationship. It's not faithfully expressing the source because it's got a vessel. It's not light. So what's its relationship with the source then? What's the model for its relationship? Not light and source. So what's its relationship?
Different expressions from the source.
Yeah, we used this in our previous classes. We compared light to other types of expression, to other types of relationship between source and that which is produced from the source. Anyone? We spoke about light is considered Giloy HaHelem, it reveals that which is concealed. So the light existed within the source in a state of concealment, and then it expresses outward into a state of revelation. Do the vessels have that relationship with the source?
No, they seem to only be recipients, right?
The recipients of the light, but they were created by the source. What is their relationship? That same thing, that they existed within it and then expansive expression outward? It's not a trick question. The answer is obviously no. Otherwise, it would be called light, not vessel.
Yeah.
The whole point of the light was to make this point that its existence is such that it just manifests the source itself without any definition or anything like that. So if I tell you that the vessel is a recipient of light and gets definition, then its emergent from the source is not going to be in that way, because otherwise it would be called light.
For sure.
Okay, so what's its relationship when it emerges from the source? What's the nature of that expression? What's the nature of that happening? This would be the closest and first thing to...
Recipient?
It's only a recipient after it exists. How did it come into existence?
Oh.
It's a recipient of the light after it comes into existence. It doesn't exist as a recipient of the essence of God Himself.
I don't understand.
Who did the light come from? What do you mean understand? Let's
That's why I can't get the answer.
what? We're not talking about the light's relationship with the vessel. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The vessel's relationship with the source, the same source from which the light came. No two gods. Not one God for the light, one God for the vessel. God forbid. Right? One God, light, vessel. Both come from Him, correct?
Yeah.
Good. They obviously have a different relationship with the source. Otherwise, they'd both be called light. Correct. Light is called light because its relationship with the source is such that it just emerges out of the concealment of the source and it expresses the source, as we've been talking about the last 2 days. So what's the vessel's relationship with the source? Not with the light, not the recipient, because the recipient is only true after it exists. Its coming into existence is in what fashion? The coming into the existence of the light is that it emerges out of the source and expresses the source. And the expression and the emergence of the existence of the vessel is what?
Has expression.
I wouldn't say
You're describing its result. What's its relationship with the source?
How could it have any?
How could it have what?
How could it have any relationship with the source?
Great question. It has to. It's born out of somewhere. Does not exist out of something.
But isn't its only purpose of creation is to be filled by a light?
You guys are all describing it after it exists. How did it come to be?
Right.
It's not in the
What do
same
you
way.
want?
Huh?
Can you rephrase it?
Essentially, it's the
How did the vessel come to be?
How did the vessel come to be?
Yes.
It's also in the same way the light is essentially.
Paradox.
Explain yourself.
Meaning to say, what is the light? At the end of the day, it's an expression of the source.
Yeah.
But it's not the source. It's a contraction of some sort that's projected that is able to give off. The receiver.
In what way is it contraction? Its whole point is to be an expression, a manifestation.
But it's
There is
not-
an element of contraction because it's not essence itself.
Because
Right,
in the same way we spoke about Shefa yesterday, it's
Yeah.
not the water that's there. It's the sun is still there. It's part of it.
It's
already-
true. It's true that in order for the light to emerge, there is a subtle.
It doesn't
There is a subtle.
expand.
1 second. There is a subtle contraction because it isn't the essence. It's a manifestation from the essence. That's true, but it's not the definition of the light.
Fine, but
The definition of the light is not that it came out of its tzimtzum. The definition of a light is that it expresses the source, right?
but the kli, the
So-
vessel is. The
Guys,
vessel
we're thinking way too hard about it. Let's keep it simpler. Because when we think about it hard, we're trying to go to places that we're not supposed to. Keep it very simple. If the answer that you're going to give me is what the function of the light of the vessel is, you're not answering my question. Because that presupposes the vessel's existence, and you're telling me its function. No. I'm asking you, how did the vessel come to be? It also comes from the same source. Nothing is created or exists without God himself. But each of the term light is being used to describe a certain relationship between an entity and the source. Because this thing its existence is such that it just expresses the source itself. And when you look at it, you see source. That's why it's being called light. Because it emerges from within, expressed outward. Great. Vessel doesn't do that. Otherwise it would be called light, not vessel.
Right.
Great. So before vessel becomes a recipient, how does its existence emerge? Out of what? And what's its relationship with the source?
It's not a production of the merge, the two of them?
Two of what?
Out of
Light and
nothingness.
the...
Out of nothingness.
That's what we were saying.
So that would be the first and closest thing to yesh me'ayin. We compared Gilui HaElem to yesh me'ayin. Light is Gilui HaElem. Light is to reveal that which is concealed. Because light is contained within the source, and then it's expansive and expressed outside the source. The source, God himself, is not full of vessels, and then vessels emerge out of him. Light, yes, that's why it's been called light. Because it's to express the energy of the source itself. It was in a state of helam, it was in a state of concealment within the source, and now it's expanded outward. You cannot say that of KEILIM.
Oh wow.
So how do they exist? They're created out of nothing. It's the closest and first thing to yesh ma'ayin. This world is definitely something from nothing. Because it's not as if within God's source there was a bunch of small little tables and small little wood that came out. Right? Matter is spontaneous creation out of nothing. So matter's relationship with the source is not manifest to concealed, but just to emerge out of nothingness. Yesh ma'ayin. So Keli is the first and closest thing to yesh ma'ayin.
Created thing.
It's a created thing.
Unlike light, it's not.
Unlike light, which is not a created thing, it's an emergent thing.
It's an immersion of an expression
Exactly.
of the source.
So light is emergent and expressed from the source. That's what we're calling it Gilui HaElem, revealing that which is concealed. We're not going to say about vessels that they're Gilui HaElem. I'm not going to say about vessels that they are emergent to express some concealed state of existence. They're created something out of nothing. Yesh ma'ayin. However, now this is all true and correct, but it isn't absolutely true. Because that would mean, in theory, if we stopped here, that would mean that Silus is only partially godly. It's only an expression of God so far as the light goes. The vessel, not really. Because the vessel is created out of nothing. And therefore its relationship with the source is detached. The same way matter's relationship with the source is detached. It's not as if you look at the source, it's like, this comes from God. You don't see that automatically when you look at the table. When you look at light, you see automatically, it's reflecting this source in an instant. And its very existence, because the whole point to emerge out of the source, all it does is express the source. Creation doesn't do that. Something from nothing doesn't do that.
You could say that the source of this table is a tree. And this expresses
Exactly.
When you look at it, it's clearly a tree.
So this is closer to Shefa, because you have a chunk of tree here.
Right.
It's more like Shefa, it's not really like light. Because you have a chunk of tree. But you are correct. And even though its source is really Hashem himself, that doesn't come automatically to you by looking at it. Right? You have to think about it, to learn about it. It's not automatic. Because the relationship between something from nothing is that this is a something and this is nothing. They're not related. Even though this made it happen. But it's not as if they have like some sort of corollary and sort of natural common existence. Light and source have a common existence. And that the light emerged from within the source to come out and express the source. But something from nothing doesn't have that relationship. It's something that emerged from a state of nothingness. It emerged prior to its existence. There was no reason for it to exist. Prior to light emerging from the source, there's lots of reason for the light to exist. All the light is contained in the source. But something from nothing, it's not as if prior to the something there was reason for the something to exist. There was no reason for the something to exist. That's why it's called something from nothing. So which would mean then if we stopped here, that would mean that in Atzilus, where you have light and vessels, let's say, before we can get to what the relationship between light and vessels are, just to understand this, that would mean that the vessel itself, Atzilus itself, is only partially godly. Half of it's created. The vessel. But that's not totally true. Because the world is a godly world. And it's God's intelligence. It's God's kindness. So even the definitions, even the vessels, even them, even though they are defined and they have definitions, nonetheless, they too are completely one with the source themselves. And this is a very difficult something to understand. Because either you tell me you're something from nothing and you're no relationship with the source and God just created you spontaneously, that I get. Or you tell me you're emergent expression. How could you be both at once?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's very difficult. It's a big paradox.
Relationship with source.
What's the relationship between matter and God himself that created it?
Well, there's a relationship because he created it.
What is the nature of that relationship? Are we going to say that creation is emergent out of
He
God?
has to constantly have it in
Great. Is the creation emergent out of God?
emergent out of
Yeah. You described before light as emergent out of the source. Would you say the same thing about creation? It's emergent out of
No,
God?
we said
Not at all.
it's,
It's something from nothing.
Right.
So its relationship is a detached one. To such a degree that I refer to God as nothing. That's why I call creation something from nothing. Because God doesn't exist. Because it's beyond me. It's so beyond my existence that I call what that is nothing compared to what I have, which is a bunch of somethings. Not because my something is more valuable than the nothing from which it came from, but because all I know of is all these somethings that I have in front
No
of me.
thing doesn't mean that it.
No thing doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means, correct, it means it's beyond this. I wouldn't call light something from nothing. It's emergent from the source. Because when you look at the source, it makes sense this source has light to produce. Right? But I don't say that about creation.
We need to know. I think we need to know what it means to be nothing. That in and of itself is.
In this particular instance, what I mean here is that it's beyond the definitions that we have.
Beyond the definitions.
That we have. And therefore, there's no thing.
Nothing in a created world just could.
Is the absence of something, right?
Right.
Not
the same thing.
Well, it's true because anything that you give a thing like title to will be something you can define. The creative force is not something you can define, so you're not going to refer to it as any, quote, thing. Hence, nothing. Not because it doesn't exist, but because there's no relationship between me and it. It creates me, but I don't know what that is. It's not as if I have some words for it. You look at the tree, you eat at the table, it came from a tree. Great, I know what tables, I know what trees are two things. And one thing came from the next, thank you very much. And then you go to the creator himself. What's the thing from which the creator, this thing emerged? Creation emerged out of God? If it emerged out of God, I'd be able to draw a line back to God, where it is in God. Like I can draw a line from the light into the source of the light. This is the big distinction we've been making in the last few days between light, which is a revelation from the source, versus creation, which is not a revelation. It's spontaneous. It's out of nothingness. Following that or no?
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So now the question becomes about the keli. The keli, which is defined. It's in this paradoxical state of existence.
Disconnect from Hashem.
On the one hand, it's a disconnect.
It's not an expression of his.
It's not exactly. Light is a full expression of him. That's why it's not defined. But the vessels that have definition don't seem to be an emergent expression of him. They seem to be created out of nothing. And to some degree, we are right. But on the other hand, the vessels in Atzilus are godly vessels. They're not simply just spontaneously created out of God. We clear on the conundrum what you're facing? We clear on the conundrum?
Clear.
On the paradox here? Yeah.
What
time is it?
3 minutes to 7.
Okay, yeah.
And a half.
So it's not a contradiction then to say that this table exists because of Klipas Naga.
We're making, that's true. That's a big leap away from what we're talking about here.
Because we're asking, why does it exist?
No, no. What I'm talking about is everything exists because God's making it exist.
Right.
But what's the relationship between the creator and the created? Right? The relationship between the source of light and the light is vastly different from the relationship between creator and created.
Can you repeat that?
The relationship between light and the source of light
Right.
is vastly different is vastly different from the relationship between creator and created.
Right.
The relationship between light and the source of light is a direct line. That's why it's called light. You look at the light, that's the source. Look at the source, yes, it's going to produce that light.
Right.
Instantaneously, you understand that.
But we don't really.
You look at creator, you don't say, oh, that's the kind of creation he's going to make.
We don't really.
You look at creation, you say, oh, that's the kind of creator it has. Which is why we refer to it as something from nothing, because there's a detachment. Because the resulted creation is spontaneous, not emergent from within him. Whereas light is emergent from within. Right? The light is revealing that which was concealed. It was concealed in the source, and now it's emergent to be revealed. That's not true of creation. It's not as if God contains within him a bunch of matter for creation. Now it's emergent outside of him.
Right.
It's not exactly what's happening. So the creation of matter is spontaneously born out of nothing. That same logic should apply seemingly to all vessels, even the vessels of Atzilus. Because if you're giving a definition is emergent out of God, out of a defineless entity as beyond all. You understand the conundrum here?
I'm lost to the Atzilus part. I have you up until that.
In the same way, we understand there's no matter contained in God that's emergent out of him.
Yeah.
Does God have in him a bunch of different attributes that are emergent out of him?
Like emotional attributes.
Yeah, any.
Okay.
Emotional, intelligent, any spheres.
No.
No.
Yeah.
He does have them. He's defined by these things. He's non-defined. He's beyond all description. So whatever description emerges later would seem to be a creation out of nothing.
So what?
The very notion of a definition is a creation,
What is the?
right? So light, which is non-defined, that's not a creation. That's emergent from within him. He expresses himself. That's why it's being called light, which is why it's infinite, just like he is infinite. The light that expresses infinite. It's a faithful expression of his truth. So it's going to remain non-defined, the light. But anything that is defined, say the vessels, seem to be a spontaneous creation. Because not as if he contains a bunch of descriptions that are emergent out of him. He's not defined.
But he had to have a thought
Right,
of some
but-
sort before he created it, right?
Oh, you're pushing at the answer already. But now already you can see the conundrum of vessel. Because the conundrum of vessel is such that we're talking about, really, everything we're saying now is a relationship between infinite and a finite. The vessels are by definition finite, because there are definitions. Here's the vessel of intelligence, here's the vessel of kindness, here's the vessel of, right, that's finite. And yet we're insisting that even these vessels are godly, which would mean it's infinite. How do you do that? Do you have a finite infinite in one thing? How do you do that? We clear on the conundrum? We clear on the paradox? On the one hand, these vessels are godly vessels. This is God's intelligence. This is God's kindness. And yet at the same time, these are definitions, which would seem to me they're not light that emerges out of him, but they're creation. We clear on the paradox here? This is what you brought to the table correctly, yeah? You follow that or no?
I think it's beyond.
So let me explain it again.
It's not an expression.
We're starting with a problem, right? We cannot, it seems that we cannot describe vessels. Anything that is defined, we cannot describe it as emergent from within God and expressing it. If it's defined, we can't do that. Because that would mean he's defined.
So
Right? Let me say this. I express words of love. That's because words of love exist in me. And to a large degree, I'm defined by those feelings. And when I'm annoyed by something, now I'm going to express words of agitation, because within me, I am
Because that's the
made
conundrum, right?
exactly. So I am made up by a bunch of definitions: love, agitation, intelligence, foolishness. I don't know, whatever it is. And whichever part of me is now activated, that's the part that's going to come out. Right? So it's not as if like my love was created out of nothing. It's emergent from love that I have inside. My agitation that's born out of nothing, it's emergent from what's inside of me.
So,
Is that true of God? He's made up a bunch of different things, and then these things emerge out of him.
So that's
Is that true of God?
That's the
No.
difficulty.
No.
When
So when you have a definition, where did the definition come from? Created out of nothing.
Right.
If it's created out of nothing, then it isn't godly. It's a creation, just like the table's a creation. The light I get is godly because the light is emerging from God. It's non-defined. It's infinite. It's just an expansive expression of God's truth without any filter, without any definition. Great, I get why that's godly. But why would the vessels be godly? The vessels seem to be creation. They seem to be a new entity that God's creating out of nothing, not emergent from within him. So how do you ever have God's kindness, which is a vessel thing, God's intelligence? You could say Levinu's intelligence, because Levinu's made up of intelligence and he expresses it. Great. God's made up of intelligence from which it's expressed? No. So the notion of intelligence is itself a creation. So the vessel seems to be a creation, which would make it detached from God, not an expression of God, as light is an expression of God. So how do we have Atzilus, which is God's kindness, God's intelligence, God's wisdom? How do we have that? How do we have these things that are defined and they're God's definitions?
You're saying Atzilus because Atzilus is defined by no KEILIM?
They are Keilim. There's Keilim that's certain. Otherwise, it wouldn't have any definitions.
Right.
It has 10 spheres. Right? So if Atzilus has Keilim, it has definitions, and yet it's a godly world. How does that work? Seemingly it's defined. And definition, by definition, would mean creation, not air, not light, not emergent. And light would be emergent. This is our big conundrum of Keilim. The big paradox of how finite and infinite coexist, which we'll have to get to tomorrow to explain how that works. And once we explain how that works, we'll understand the relationship between light and vessel. Yes?
We have to look at the KEILIM as just tools for other means.
Oh, so if they're tools, very good.
And I guess that would be mitzvot, right?
No, let's don't go there yet just yet.
But I'm saying,
Yeah.
they're tools to
Oh.
make the connection.
Exactly. There are tools. Here's a tool of kindness, here's a tool of wisdom, and that tool was emerged out of what? Because God contains in the potential for a bunch of tools?
No, it emerged out of his creativeness.
Oh, so it's creative. So it's not light. It's not light that emerges out of him.
No, but
it's creation out of nothing, really.
It has a purpose.
No problem. But its existence is a creation type of existence, not a light type of existence, which would mean it's detached from him. It's not emergent from him. It's created by him. If that's the case, then those vessels are not godly.
Right.
They're created by God.
But that's why.
So then how do you have God's kindness? That's the question.
Yeah.
That's the big question you have to deal with right now.
Yeah.
And all the Kabbalists deal with this question, and so does Chassidus. And God willing, tomorrow I'll show you how the Tanya approaches that. And that's going to help us understand the relationship between the light and the vessel. We're clear? But now we're touching on the problem. I want to be clear on the problem, though.
Yeah.
Why the Kelim are such a big problem. Because it's really the meeting point of finite and infinite. And we want to insist that even the finitude of Hashem's kindness and wisdom is still God. And it's not created with a separate entity. That's a tool. Which you're right about. But at the same time, it's a godly tool. How does that work?
Right.
This is our conundrum. Clear?
Right.
Okay, very good. Let's go down. Now we're clear on this problem?
Clear.
We think on the problem. It's good to think about the problem. I'm serious. We come tomorrow, we should see the big problem, and then we'll, God willing, describe how it's somewhat solved or understood to some degree.
Yeah, but so this
Why is it
doesn't have to
important
do
to know
with.
Because that will help us understand the relationship between light and vessel. And then it'll help us understand the relationship between, when we say that God's kind to us, we'll understand what that actually means. Because right now, it wouldn't seem like God's kind to us. It would seem like God's detached from the whole notion of kindness, any creative kindness that exists in our world, but he's detachment. So to say God's kind, right now, would sound almost wrong. What do you mean God's kind? He's beyond kind. He's beyond definition. He created this tool called kindness that exists in our world. Great. It's not he's being kind? No. That's what it would seem like right now. Which obviously Chassidus wants to insist, no. It's God being kind. But yet that seems to be a problem. It seems to be a contradiction. Because kindness is a vessel that's defined, which means created. So it's not an expression of him.
So it's no difference between a table and a kindness.
Exactly. No difference between table and kindness. Exactly right. Both of which are detached from him seemingly. So God's kindness? What are you saying? You're saying, davening, you're strong, you're wise, you're kind. What are you talking about? No, you're not. You're beyond all that. You created kindness. You created wisdom. You are kind and wise. Not true. You created it. That's what it would seem like right now. But if the Kelim Atzilus are godly, now I could say you are kind, you are wise. And this is the big question. How do we explain that? And that'll explain the relationship between light and vessel and give us a truly intimate relationship with God. Clear? Because it means God's truly invested in the relationship, not just created this thing called relationship. Clear? Okay. Let's go to that one. We're late.